I know I have a story to share. I never seen myself being in this situation where I'm literally hopping out of a window just to save my own life. Well, I'm going to share the story and I'm going to share with you all how I ended up in this situation.
Casey had never been the kind of person to take risks, but when the deadline for housing loomed closer, she had no choice. Her best friend had bailed on their roommate agreement, and now she was left scouring the forums and social medias for someone to split the rent. That's how she found Angie. Angie seemed perfect, polite, responsible, and easy to talk to. Her messages were friendly, and during their video calls, she laughed at Casey's awkward jokes. Angie said she loved to cook, kept a clean space, and didn't party much. Casey was sold. They agreed to move into a small off-campus apartment together. The first few weeks were smooth. Angie cooked hearty dinners for both of them, decorated the apartment with cozy fairy lights, and even surprised Casey with coffee on stressful mornings. She seemed like the dream roommate, but things started to change. It began with the mirrors. Casey noticed Angie covering every reflective surface in her room with black cloth. The bathroom mirror was next. When Casey asked about it, Angie shrugged and said, "Mirrors are just uncomfortable for me." Casey brushed it off. Everyone had their quirks, right? But then Angie started disappearing at odd hours. She wouldn't explain where she went, and when she returned, there was always dirt under her nails and her hair seemed slightly damp. Casey joked about Angie joining a secret guardian club, but Angie's expression darkened. "I just like to be alone sometimes," she muttered before retreating to her room. One night, Casey woke up to the sound of scratching. At first, she thought it was coming from the walls, maybe rats, but as she sat up, she realized it was coming from Angie's room. The noise was rhythmic, deliberate, almost like nails raking across wood. Casey crept to Angie's door and knocked softly. The scratching stopped immediately. After a pause, Angie's voice came low and cold. "Go back to bed, Casey." The next morning, Angie was back to her cheerful self, offering pancakes and chatting about her plans for the weekend. Casey didn't mention the scratching. Casey started feeling uneasy. She decided to clean the apartment one day while Angie was out, hoping to distract herself from the growing tension. While tidying Angie's bookshelf, she accidentally knocked over a stack of journals. One fell open, and before she could stop herself, Casey read a line. "I see her watching me through the cracks. She doesn't know yet, but soon she will." Casey's blood ran cold. She flipped through more pages. The entries were all about her, her habits, her favorite foods, the time she left for class. Angie had even drawn sketches of her face, but the faces weren't right. The eyes were too wide, the mouth stretched unnaturally, and the teeth sharp. That evening, Casey confronted Angie. "What the hell is this?" she demanded, holding up the journal. Angie didn't deny it. Instead, she smiled, but it wasn't the friendly smile Casey had grown too used to. It was too wide, too strained, as if her face didn't quite know how to move. "You're special, Casey," Angie said softly, stepping closer. "I knew the moment I saw your post online that you were perfect for this." "For what?" Casey stammered, backing away. Angie didn't answer. She simply tilted her head, her eyes glinting with something feral. Then she whispered, "You'll see soon enough." That night, Casey locked her bedroom door, but sleep was impossible. Around 2 a.m., she heard Angie's door creak open. The sound of a slow, deliberate footsteps followed. Casey's breath hitched as they stooped just outside her door. A soft scraping began. It sounded like claws, no nails, dragging against the wood. "Casey," Angie's voice sang. "Casey. Sweet little Casey," warped and echoed. "Let me in." Casey didn't move. She gripped her phone, ready to call the police, but then the doorknob rattled violently. "I said let me in, Casey." Angie's voice deepened, a guttural growl now. "Let me in, Casey. Let me in." The door frame started to splinter. Casey screamed, grabbing a lamp as a weapon. Suddenly, everything went quiet. She listened for movement, her heart pounding in her chest. Then, from the crack under the door, a dark, viscous liquid began to seep into her room. It smelled of rot. Casey didn't wait to see what happened next. She leaped through the window and climbed down the fire escape. As she scrambled down, she heard Angie's laughter echoing inhumanly through the night. When Casey reached the ground, she looked back and saw Sarah standing in the window, her face no longer human. Her eyes glowed yellow and her mouth twisted into a natural grin full of too many teeth. "You can't run forever!" Angie called. "You're mine, Casey! I have your scent! You're mine!" Casey didn't stop running until she reached the nearest police station. When the officers investigated the apartment, they found no sign of Angie's, just the journals, the covered mirrors, and strange symbols etched into the walls. Casey moved back to campus housing, but she never felt safe again. She kept the lights on at night and avoided making new friends. Sometimes, though, she'll catch a glimpse of a figure in her peripheral vision, a woman with glowing eyes and a twisted grin, waiting just beyond the mirrors. And that night hunt her, and it will hunt her for the rest of her day.